Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen is in love with my husband. I shut her down. After that, am I the jerk for refusing to cook for my husband after what he said? And after that, I told my son I'd rather have his ex-wife as my daughter than him as my son after he got cut out of our will. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to steal someone else's husband. You mean I'm gonna be stuck with you forever, Reddit boy? So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen is in love with my husband. I shut her down. Long story short, my husband has one of those female friends. I'll call her Sarah. Her and I get along fine, but every once in a while she'll make a comment or sit a little too close or touch him a lot or compete with me on how close they are or how well she knows him. She's one in a big group of about 11 friends. I've talked to my husband about her several times, but it's so many added up micro actions that it's hard to tell her off for one singular thing without looking crazy. Well, this past weekend, the group of friends got together for the very first time since we all now have our boosters. My husband and I eloped a few weeks ago, and this was the first time that most of us were seeing each other since. Sarah came up and got in our face as the group was congratulating us to tell my husband how disappointed she was in him for not telling her about our ceremony, not inviting her, not even sending her a photo. He told her nobody except our parents knew. Nobody was invited, and we don't have our professional photos back. This girl started sobbing. How could he do this to her? That she wanted him to be her man of honor when she gets married. She's single, and he didn't even invite her to his, and their friendship now needed some serious TLC to recover. This is in front of a whole group. I couldn't take it anymore and said, he might be your best friend, but you're not his. And this was between me and him. You were not even a consideration. There were some frosty oohs from the crowd, and she left the house. The crowd is split. They were all my husband's friends before I came into the picture, and some think it was uncalled for, that I should have just let my husband handle it. I was mad in the moment, but now I don't know. Did I go too far? Not the jerk. She stepped over the line with her sobbing and demands publicly that she needs TLC? She's got a whole relationship in her head that may or may not exist, and your husband needs to draw that line in the sand. OP. Yeah, the TLC comment was what I think triggered me. The only tender thing I ask for of my friends is chicken. Not the jerk, but I'm curious as to why your husband hasn't distanced himself from someone who doesn't even respect your relationship. OP. They don't do things one-on-one anymore, but she's still within the main friend group, so it's hard to not have her around. He still needs to set boundaries. Her behavior was way out of line. She's honestly acting like your husband is either a fallback person for her or the one who got away. She needs to be shut down immediately, or you two need to be a united front about it. Honestly, your husband is just as to blame as his friend is. She keeps violating boundaries, and your husband keeps allowing it. You should be mad at him, especially since he hasn't done anything to stop this. He isn't an incompetent little kid. He knows what's going on and chooses to not cut her off despite you complaining about her behavior and that she obviously makes you uncomfortable. Unfriending someone isn't hard, and he should have done it a while ago with her. You shouldn't be fighting her. He should. Not the jerk, and I wish you could see how hard my eyes rolled reading this post. Talk about no boundaries. She's so transparently into your husband, it's almost painful. While you definitely could have let him handle her, you weren't out of line in the least. This girl needs to know where she stands, and that's well behind you. Nicely done. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the husband's friend? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for refusing to cook for my husband after what he said? I, female 30, live with my husband, male 35, and our 3 kids, who are 8, 5, and 2. I work as a freelance artist from home, and my husband works long hours driving. As a result, I do the majority of housework and look after our 3 kids. Though when he's off work and home, he takes on his fair share. Our lives mean that we don't have much free time. I enjoy cooking, and as a mom, I make sure to give my kids a wide variety of foods to eat. I want them to appreciate different cultures, flavors, and different types of cuisine from all around the world, and to grow up kind and respectful of others. So a few days a week, 3 out of 7, my kids and I cook together and make a recipe from another country. We all enjoy this, and it gives a perfect segue into learning about a foreign country. My husband, on the other hand, has a more plain palate and prefers simpler English dishes that he grew up with, such as pies, fish and chips, roast dinners, etc. We eat plenty of meals like this too. A week ago, we hired a babysitter and went to a friend's house for dinner. We've all been tested. They cooked a beautiful vegetarian pie with mashed potatoes and vegetables. My husband turned to them and said, "Finally, a decent meal for once. Pickle Pie Banana is always cooking these awful smelly dishes." Feeling hurt, I looked at my husband and asked him what he meant, and he said that he only puts up with it because he doesn't have time to cook something decent for himself. The meal was a little awkward after that, but neither of us brought it up again while there until we came home. I told him that I wouldn't stop cooking foreign food with the kids, and if he didn't like it, he would have to cook something for himself. He once again said that he didn't have time for that, and I should just cook him something he likes at the same time, which I refused to do, mainly because when he comes home after work, he spends all his time, up until bedtime, gaming. This is around 4 to 4.5 hours of time after he comes in. He has plenty of time to cook a quick but decent meal for himself and enjoy his hobby. Once again this week, I cooked with my kids, and like I told my husband, I didn't leave him any. He was upset, but ordered takeout. The second time, he went around to his parents' house and his mom cooked for him. The next day, I got a phone call from my mother-in-law saying I was a jerk for not cooking for my husband, and that I spent all day doing my hobby, my actual job, and why shouldn't he enjoy his hobby? Which again, he still can and does do. I also still cook for him on the days I'm not cooking anything foreign. Am I the jerk for refusing to cook for him on these days? Not the jerk, but I think you have bigger problems than your husband not liking foreign food. He doesn't respect your time, effort, or job and is comfortable insulting you casually at a gathering. That is genuinely concerning that he put her down like that. No wonder it was uncomfortable. Also, what do you want to bet he ranted about her to his mom when he was there? Yeah, he would never be eating another home-cooked meal from me. Not the jerk. He was an absolute jerk for making that comment in front of company and for his wording. He didn't want smelly food. Well, you did as he asked and didn't leave him a share so he wouldn't be forced to eat it. No matter how little time one has, everyone has 5 minutes to do an omelet, cut some mozzarella and some tomatoes on the side, sprinkle salt, basil, and oil, and boom, food. If he doesn't want to do that and has to run to mommy to feed him, then there are way larger issues than his childish palate. Not the jerk. If he's gaming 4.5 hours a night, then how is he doing his fair share of parenting when he's home? He sounds selfish, rude, and entitled. OP. What I mean is that he works for a couple of days, then has a day off. On his days off, he cooks lunch, cleans, spends time with the kids, etc. When he's working, he comes home and plays video games. Thank you for answering my question. You've clarified things, but that doesn't sound like his fair share. When do you get to take a weekday evening off so that you can do your hobby uninterrupted while he cooks dinner and takes care of the kids? Why does he only have to parent on his days off? Also, what he said about your cooking to your friends was wildly rude and he owes you an apology. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. I could really go for some fish and chips myself right now. I told my son I'd rather have his ex-wife as a daughter than him as my son after he got cut out of our will. 16 years ago, my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife, Josie. I've always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth, because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and never answered our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was suffering alone. Last night, Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he had focused more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a jerk and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room, saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me, saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd grow up to be a jerk just like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than have him as my son, and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. Am I the jerk? Edit. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college, and Josie was known as a party girl before that. Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt, then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home. Make sure to leave him and his son $1 each so they can't contest the will by saying you forgot about them. Not the jerk. Dude abandoned his family and only came back sniffing around when his dad was in a bad state and he thought he might get something out of it. He couldn't even be civil and fake nice long enough for that conversation. Not the jerk. I feel sorry for OP and her husband that their son turned out to be a truly bad man. Glad she is a firm enough character herself to appreciate the kindness and love she's received from Josie and that she supports her and Ruth now. Hold steady, OP. Ignore Matt's wife and friends who are only looking for a payday. Don't be swayed by these fakers. Peace to you both. Manager targeted me because of my family priorities. It cost her her job. I have worked at a certain home improvement store for close to a decade now, about 8 years roughly. The first 7 was in North Carolina before I moved up further north to be with my best friend and her husband, who I learned was pregnant with my first godchild. As such, I transferred up to a store in the area and put my nose to the grindstone. I worked garden before and did that for some months before I started to be moved from department to department as this store was low on staff. However, this was not full-time. My old HR had dropped the ball and this store believed I wanted part-time. Having already moved, I grabbed a part-time overnight job at a gym to make ends meet and continued to work, all the while asking repeatedly for full-time at the main job and never getting a definitive word back or change. Several months into this, my goddaughter was born. As I lived with my friends during this time, and during the time of lockdown, I spent quite a lot of time helping to raise her, and we became close. I would take time off that I was allotted to help look after her, and there were no problems. Half a year into this change, and I had made a good name for myself. I did not have a good deal of friends per se, but I was respected for my work ethic and willingness to help out anyone in any department that asked me. Enter a new assistant manager. The ASM was abrasive to staff and used to getting her way. The first I heard of her was when she outright fired a girl working the front desk because of a logo on her jacket. Myself and several other employees organized a walkout in protest of this and succeeded in getting the store manager to reverse the decision made by the ASM. This was not our first walkout, having done this in the past whenever another ASM, the current's predecessor, made mean comments about a cashier. Soon after this, I was given full-time by the ops manager, working and receiving for a cantankerous supervisor. We often did not get along, especially as my godchild got older and I took on babysitting duties while her parents worked and slept. It was not something I minded as I adored the kid. I often talked about her with my coworkers and loved to show pictures and stories. However, this was not something shared by my higher-ups. My supervisor was upset that I could not work overtime to help him as we were the only 2 in receiving for the store because of either my second job or babysitting. And soon after the second walkout, I was made aware of a rumor circulating around the store that the kid was in fact my own daughter that I had fathered outside of my friend's husband's knowledge. The source of the rumor was unknown, but my ASM had made disparaging remarks to me in the past about men taking care of kids, so I had my theories. My holiday plans, asked off in advance as soon as our electronic system allowed, were canceled without explanation, both Thanksgiving and Christmas. I had never missed a major holiday since I moved north, and I had asked the same days off the year prior and had gotten them off before the ASM arrived. Strike one. And soon after this, my supervisor, whom I work closely with every day, had a positive test, forcing me, per company rules, to self-isolate until I could get a positive or negative test myself. During this week, as it took a full week to find a place with enough room to give tests, I was harassed repeatedly by text and phone call by both management and my supervisor to track down an at-home test and get back to work ASAP. All the while, I had to inform everyone I was in contact with, including my friends, family, and roommates, that I had been exposed, risking their own holiday trips and plans. Strike two. Thankfully, my test was negative. A week after this, the Northeast gets slammed by a snow and ice storm. I drive a four-wheeled vehicle and so made it in, but near the end of my shift, I was made aware that my friend's husband had been injured and stranded in a car accident on the ice, and so left to get them home and their car to a service station. To add to it all, they have lost power in their home with an infant, leaving me the only person they could turn to with a vehicle and power. I will admit, I had a few sick hours left, but informed work that I would be out on a family emergency. For that week, I called out each day with ongoing family emergency, with snow and ice still coating the streets and power still down throughout our city. And every day I was hounded by calls from management, demanding I return to work regardless. This would have not only risked my own safety, but would have stranded my family at my apartment with no way to get supplies or get home once the power returned. Strike three. I was done. Early in the morning that following Sunday, I walked into work and placed my resignation letter on HR's desk. That is important later. I had tendered it to be immediate, as I live in an at-will state. Was it petty? Yes, I will freely admit that. I had given 8 years of my life to this company and asked for very little in return. As I was leaving, I crossed paths with my supervisor, who asked angrily if I was finally coming back to work. I informed him of my decision to leave, ignoring his provocations, and left to go home and sleep. Several hours later, I received the gift that would ignite my semi-accidental revenge. A single text from my ASM. We will see how long you can take care of your love child without us. Well, seems I found my probable source. My friends had been made aware of this rumor from the start. I did not hide anything from them, and they did not want any kind of rumor, however unlikely, to reach them from anyone but me. They are my closest friends and compatriots, and have given me the greatest gift in the form of my godchild, whom they insist I call my niece, as I am family. Love child feels like an insult against her, and I am not cool with that, and neither are they. However, they informed me of the monumental mess-up my now former ASM had made. It was time for corporate HR to be made aware, and so I began to compile my evidence, the texts from my supervisor, the call records and messages left, and this holy grail of a text message. If I was going to leave, I was at the very least going to give some blowback on the team that had been so willing to target me. What happened after is secondhand from friends I had that still worked at the store, and so I cannot entirely verify all of it. But the ASM played herself. The following day, a meeting of management and supervisors was convened, where the ASM made it known that I had been fired, not self-terminated, for job abandonment and immorality. And unless I am grossly misinformed about the nature of American retail work, immorality is not a fireable event. So to my supervisor's credit, he defended me to the ASM and was fired on the spot. The store's HR rep, having earlier gotten my printed termination letter on his desk, made it known that I had indeed not been fired but left on my own, and the ASM attempted to fire him as well in front of the staff, and from there it spiraled. According to my source, entire departments began to walk out or outright quit, having had their own problems with the ASM. Appliances quit to a man. Garden left with their manager to work at a competitor's, as he had been working on this well before my saga began. Front desk walked out in protest as it came out that the ASM had threatened and blackmailed several part-time workers to not wear their headscarves if they wanted hours. Lumber, receiving's main partner, quit. Pro desk joined the front desk protest. Cashiers, both head cashiers quit, and the other trained cashiers walked out with the desks. Ops manager had informed the district manager and quit outright before he arrived, walking out with the HR rep and my old supervisor. My source's last report of the ASM was seeing her sprinting to her car after having heard that the district staff was inbound and the store manager was forced to shut the store down for the next 2 days. Last I've heard. I've been in contact with the other injured parties, and we're compiling all the evidence we've collected, as several of the families are hiring lawyers. I suspect the company will attempt to keep this quiet. I just never suspected that anything like this would happen. I have a full-time position at the gym upcoming, and I've been enjoying the extra sleep and time I get to spend with my family. I'm never working 56 to 64-hour weeks ever again, and I will never darken the doorstep of that store again. I hope my ASM enjoyed the temporary rush of power. I suspect she won't get it ever again, at least not in manager positions. I can work in a group? Are you sure? Background. My senior year of high school, I went on foreign exchange to Brazil. I chose Brazil because it's a beautiful tropical country, and I'm an idiot who thinks just because I'm super smart with math and science that a whole language, Portuguese, would come easily to me. It didn't. I struggled with the language and found myself in an awkward situation. I'm a clever bloke, and I'm used to being able to express that. I'm that guy who likes to know how and why everything works the way it does, and I'm used to launching into conversations and explanations about how things work at the drop of a hat. But here I sat, unable to express myself as eloquently as I wanted to. So I turned from a talkative / mildly obnoxious know-it-all into a quiet kid. Necessary background. While I was in Brazil on exchange, I was placed into public school. Now for my American friends. Brazilian high school is a little different from American. Instead of students going from class to class, the teachers would switch classrooms between each subject. The teacher who is the subject of this story was the English teacher, a man who looked almost identical to Weird Al. He began his classes by walking into the room, holding out some English assignments, throwing an English music video on the TV with Portuguese subtitles, and then he'd read the newspaper or a book for the rest of the class. During his first class, while reading his newspaper, he loudly explained that group work was allowed on all assignments and tests, at which point everyone in the class looked at me. Clearly, he was not aware that he had an American exchange student in his class. Subsequently, every one of his classes for the rest of the term, all the students would form a long conga line around my desk, and he wouldn't notice. Of course, the assignments were trivial for me, the equivalent of middle school English, so I'd knock them out instantly, then provided explanations in broken Portuguese along with the answers. The smarter kids in the class would check their answers against mine and give better explanations. By the end of the year, everyone in his class had a perfect grade. Our teacher was ecstatic. Clearly, his teaching style of playing music videos and ignoring students was a success. He threw a small party for us with food and drinks. At the end of this party, as we were all leaving, I stopped to talk to him in English for the first time since beginning in his class. Me. Hey, Professor T, I just wanted to thank you for a fun class. Professor T. Of course. You're American? Me. Yes, you didn't know? I left him there, slack-jawed, and with a class of students speaking very passable English. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter she should change her wedding dress to green? The oldest daughter is straight-laced and is doing the whole get married and have a traditional life. She places a lot of emphasis on her upcoming wedding. My youngest is the opposite. While I don't agree with some of her choices, things she takes, travel, and, I guess, to be a modern-day hippie, she likes the term digital nomad. She's an adult. She pays for her way of life. There's not much more I can do. Oldest kicked my youngest out of the wedding party. It's because my youngest has eloped with her boyfriend. The guy is about 10 years older than her, divorced with 2 kids. I think what set my oldest off is that her fiancé comes from money, and the wedding will be stupid lavish. However, my youngest daughter's husband has a lot more money, and he wholeheartedly supports my daughter's artistic temperament. The oldest is being told by her in-laws that her sister doesn't have the same family values as what she's being married into. My oldest has banned her sister from the wedding and says she's going no contact with her sister over her lifestyle choices. I told my oldest what's done is done. She needs to grow up and not expect everyone to live by her lofty standards. She also needs to stop being jealous of her sister, or she might as well make her wedding dress green. Now she has banned me from the wedding. My husband isn't going to go now that I'm forbidden, or his other daughter is forbidden. My oldest is going on a rampage on social media, talking about how her dad refuses to walk her down the aisle at the wedding. I told her she was playing the victim for no reason. Oldest, her fiance, and his family are all blasting up on social media, saying we are immoral people. Not the jerk. Sounds like your oldest daughter has been brainwashed by a cult or something. I'd honestly be worried about her if I were you. Maybe have an intervention. I'm not sure if she has been brainwashed or if she's just willingly ready to drop anyone and anything to marry into a wealthy family and have the perfect wedding and perfect life. I'm also sure that she's upset that her sister was able to marry rich while being true to herself. I will honestly be shocked if the eldest daughter even makes it down the aisle without imploding. If she's ready to drop her sister and parents in a heartbeat, she will probably be hiring and firing her bridal party, fighting with vendors, and throwing a tantrum if the most minor things don't go right. I also find it funny that the groom's stuck-up parents think the sister being an artist is beneath them, but social media drama is real classy. My Karen stepmom is jealous of me spending time with my dad. I'm 14, and I live with my dad and stepmom. My mom passed when I was 5, and my dad and stepmom got together when I was 9, and they got me to move in with my nan. 2 years ago, my nan had a stroke, and she had to go to a nursing home, so I moved in with my dad and stepmom. Ever since my dad and stepmom got together, I couldn't spend time with just my dad. My stepmom had to come too. I also got the vibe she didn't really like me, so I had no idea why she always wanted to hang out with me. It made hanging out with my dad really awkward. When I moved back in with them, it got worse, because every time we were having a conversation, she'd come in like, "What are we talking about?" and just join in the conversation even if it had nothing to do with her. If she could, she would stand or sit between us too. I mentioned it to my dad a couple times, and he said he'd never noticed, and he doesn't think it's true that it's every time. He was like, "It's her house too. She can hang out with us if she wants." I don't think it was getting through to him that it was every time, and it was weirding me out. So next time she did it, I was like, "Hey, why do you always come in and join every conversation I have with my dad and stand between us?" And she laughed and said, "Oh, I'm just a bit of a jealous person." And when I asked what she meant, she was like, "I get jealous when my husband spends time with other girls." I told her that was really weird, and I'm not another girl, I'm his daughter. My dad and stepmom keep insisting it was a joke, but it really creeped me out, and I can't help but take it seriously. I asked her to stop butting into our conversations, and she was like, "Oh, so I need your permission to talk to my own husband in my own home?" Which is definitely not what I was saying at all. Now my stepmom is acting all hurt and upset, and my dad wants me to apologize for hurting her feelings. He says I deliberately overreacted to her joke just because I don't like her, and I was taking any excuse to be mean to her and exclude her. But I really feel like it was a weird joke to make, even if she didn't 100% mean it like that, and I think I have the right to be weirded out by it. Plus, I think I have the right to ask to spend some time with just my dad, and it doesn't mean I'm trying to exclude her. Wait, you lived with your nan from when your dad and stepmom got married until your nan was no longer able to take care of you, correct? I'm assuming this wasn't your choice since you were a little kid at the time. She's absolutely jealous of you, and she wasn't joking. You weren't allowed to live with your own parent, for goodness sake. I don't know who is more of the jerk here, her or your dad, but it sure isn't you. Not the jerk, and both of the adults in this situation should be ashamed of themselves. OP. Yeah, they were like, "You're moving in with Nan now. Bye." You deserve a better father. I'm so sorry that he treats you the way that he does. One day he will regret it, but hopefully by that time, you will be the strong, independent, successful woman that you're meant to be. Your dad literally remarried and then threw you out to live with your nan. Horrible. If I were you, I'd throw that in his face. Your stepmom is probably jealous because you are his previous wife's kid and she doesn't want any trace of her. Your dad does not love you properly. Both of them are despicable people, especially your father for letting this happen. Dad can love her and still make bad parenting decisions or put the stepmother first. Please do not say that to a teenager. It is extremely hurtful to feel that way. It can also cause harm. OP, someone can love you and still do bad things, but that does not mean it is okay for them to do so or that you should put up with it. Same goes for you loving them. You can love someone and forgive them and still put boundaries or distance yourself from them. What is going on here isn't okay, but no stranger online can say whether your father loves you or not. I would bring it up to your dad that you want to talk to him one-on-one, then explain to him that them sending you off to your grandma's as soon as he remarried already made things weird. So when this joke came around, it didn't feel like a joke. Maybe some family therapy can help. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend her nannies were paid to raise her? I, 21 male, have a girlfriend named Anna, 21 female, who comes from a very rich family while I came from a middle-class family. And while I did grow up with a lot of privileges, none of them were in the same level as hers. Anna grew up in a home where house staff, nannies, and bodyguards were commonplace, and while she's a very nice and down-to-earth person, she always had a very sheltered reality. For example, she's the kind of person who has a savings account, doesn't eat out every day, and regularly donates to charity, but thinks that Apple products are perfect gifts for whenever she doesn't know what to get someone. A few days back, we were talking about holidays, and I asked her how she spent Mother's Day. Since her mother passed when she was a baby and her father never remarried, she just said that the only usual thing she did on Mother's Day was that she visited her mom's grave in the morning with her father. I got confused by that. Then I asked how she spent the rest of the day, and she mentioned that growing up, she would make cards and give them to the nannies, and they would spend the day playing and eating the sweets she asked her father to order. I just kind of laughed at that point, and she asked me what I was laughing about. Then I told her, "You know, the nannies were just doing their jobs, right?" She got annoyed and told me that she knew, but they raised and loved her, and the least she could do was to give them their due. And that was when I think I might be the jerk. After she told me that, I joked, "Yeah, I bet the fat paycheck certainly helped them to love you." Because when I said that, she got quiet, grabbed her things, and left. Since then, she's been cold towards me and told me she's rethinking our relationship, but I really think she's overreacting. What do you guys think? Am I the jerk?
Huge shout out to our newest official channel member, Tiffany. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It really means the world to Reddit Boy and I. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.